She stood on the grand stage of her family's lakeside mansion, spotlights blazing down as applause thundered through the room. The words "heiress to billions" echoed from the microphone, stripping away every layer of the ordinary life she'd fought to protect. In that instant, the man she loved, the one whose guarded heart she'd finally begun to warm, watched from the shadows, his face frozen in shock and hurt. He turned away, convinced the woman he'd fallen for had lied about everything. But was it too late? Could one moment of truth shatter a love built on quiet kindness? Or would it finally set them both free? Welcome to Lord of Hearts, where stories touch the soul, spark hope, and remind us that real love sees beyond surface glitter. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a heartfelt tale. If you're returning, thank you for coming back. Your support means everything. Have you ever hidden a big part of yourself from someone you care about, afraid it would change how they see you? Maybe it was a past success, a family secret, or something deeper that made you question if love could stay pure. Drop a comment below. What's one thing you've kept hidden in a relationship, and why? Your stories inspire us all. This is the story of Seraphina Langford, a woman who chose a simple path in a city of endless ambition. She lived quietly, worked hard, and guarded her heart fiercely, until one chance meeting cracked open possibilities she never expected. But when her hidden world collided with his, the fallout tested everything. Stick around until the end to discover if love can survive the truth, or if some revelations come too late. If this opening pulled at your heartstrings already, smash that like button right now. It helps spread these uplifting messages. And share this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness always wins in the end. Let's dive in. Seraphina Langford woke each morning to the soft hum of traffic drifting through her open window in a cozy Lincoln Park apartment. The space was small but bright, with white walls covered in sketches and mood boards from her freelance graphic design projects. She brewed coffee in a simple kitchen, then settled at her desk by the window, laptop open to client briefs. Her days followed a quiet rhythm, designing logos for local startups, editing brochures for community events, and occasionally taking on passion projects for non-profits. She drove a reliable grey sedan that blended into the streets, parked in the same spot every day, and shopped at the corner market, where the cashier knew her by name. On weekends, she walked to nearby cafes, ordered the same black coffee, and sketched ideas while watching people pass by. Her wardrobe stayed understated, soft sweaters, jeans, and comfortable shoes, nothing flashy to draw attention. Friends knew her as the thoughtful one who always listened, who remembered birthdays and offered help without expecting anything back. This routine wasn't forced, it was deliberate. In a city where success often shouted its presence, Seraphina preferred to move quietly. She earned enough from her work to live comfortably, but she never touched the trust fund her family had set aside. Every decision reflected a deeper choice, to be known for her actions, not her background. The city pulsed around her, tall buildings gleaming in the sun, the lake shimmering in the distance, but she found peace in the ordinary moments, in the small ways she contributed to others' lives. Years earlier, during her time at college, Seraphina learned a lesson that reshaped her entire approach to relationships. She had started dating a classmate named Ethan Caldwell, someone she met in an art history seminar. Their connection felt real at first. Late-night study sessions, shared playlists, walks across campus under falling leaves. Ethan seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her sketches, her quiet humor. Then came the shift. One evening, while scrolling through old family photos on her phone during a casual hangout, a picture slipped into view. Seraphina at a charity event with her parents. The background filled with people in formal attire and a banner displaying the Langford family name. Ethan's eyes widened. The next few weeks brought subtle changes. More questions about her home life, sudden invitations to expensive places she had never suggested, comments about opportunities tied to her connections. When she gently confronted him, the truth spilled out. Ethan admitted he had researched her surname after seeing the photo and discovered the scale of her family's success in tech and investments. "I thought we could build something amazing together," he said, but his tone carried excitement that had nothing to do with her as a person. The relationship ended soon after, leaving Seraphina with a sharp realization. Once money entered the picture, motives became impossible to trust. From that day forward, she made a firm decision. She would keep her family background locked away, sharing only what felt safe and true. No mentions of private jets, sprawling estates, or boardroom discussions. She changed how she presented herself. Simpler clothes, modest habits, no hints of privilege. The goal was clear. Any love that came her way had to be for Seraphina the person, the artist, the friend, not Seraphina the heiress. The scar from that betrayal stayed quiet but deep, a constant reminder to protect her heart until someone proved worthy of seeing the full truth. The charity gala for urban green spaces took place in a grand ballroom downtown, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in soft linen. Seraphina arrived early, wearing a deep green dress she had chosen for its understated elegance. Nothing that screamed wealth, just clean lines and quiet confidence. She carried a small clutch and a stack of promotional flyers she had designed herself. Her role tonight was simple: hand out materials, chat with attendees about the importance of city parks, and quietly support the cause she believed in. The room buzzed with conversation. Business leaders mingling with philanthropists, laughter rising above the soft jazz quartet. Seraphina moved through the crowd with ease, offering smiles and brief explanations of the project. She felt comfortable here. These events reminded her why she kept her life modest. The mission mattered more than any spotlight. Near the appetizer station, she reached for a small plate of bruschetta. At the same moment, a tall man in a tailored charcoal suit did the same. Their hands brushed. She pulled back quickly. "I'm sorry," she said, looking up. The man turned. Harlan Whitaker, though she didn't know his name yet, stood there, expression neutral, almost detached. Dark hair neatly styled, sharp jawline, eyes the color of storm clouds over the lake. He held himself with the posture of someone used to commanding space without effort. "No need," he replied, voice low and measured. "Plenty left." She smiled politely and stepped aside, but something made her pause. Maybe the way he scanned the room like he was calculating exits, or the faint tightness around his mouth that suggested he would rather be anywhere else. "You here for the cause, or the networking?" she asked lightly, hoping to ease the moment. Harlan glanced at her, surprised by the direct question. Most people at these events launched into small talk about deals or introductions. "Both, I suppose. My company sponsors a few initiatives like this. Keeps the image polished." She nodded, not pressing. "Fair enough. I'm mostly here because Park saved me during some rough patches. A bench by the water can fix a lot of things." For the first time, a flicker crossed his face. Something close to interest. "Rough patches?" Seraphina shrugged. "College stress, creative blocks, the usual. I'd walk the lakefront trail for hours. It cleared my head, made me remember there's more to life than deadlines." Harlan studied her for a beat longer than necessary. "Most people come to these galas to be seen. You sound like you actually care about the trees." "I do," she said simply. "Green spaces give people room to breathe. In a city this busy, that's rare." He set his plate down, no longer pretending to eat. "I grew up without much access to anything green. Empty lots, chain-link fences. I used to climb the one decent tree in the neighborhood just to get above it all." The admission came out quietly, almost reluctant, as if he hadn't planned to share it. Seraphina felt the shift, the brief crack in his composed exterior. "That tree must have meant a lot," she said gently. "It did. Until the city cut it down for a parking structure." His tone stayed even, but the memory lingered in his eyes. "Taught me early that nothing stays unless you fight for it." Seraphina felt a pull toward him then, not pity, but recognition. She knew what it felt like to protect something fragile inside yourself. They drifted toward a quieter corner near a large window overlooking the city lights. Conversation flowed easily after that. She told him about sketching in Grant Park at sunrise, how the light changed everything. He shared fragments, how he had built his company from a single warehouse lease, how every deal since had been about control, security, never being caught off guard again. You sound like someone who doesn't leave much to chance, she observed. Chance is expensive, he replied. I prefer certainty. But certainty can feel lonely, she said softly. Harlan looked at her then, really looked. No deflection, no quick retort. Just a long, quiet moment where the noise of the gala faded. Maybe, he conceded, but it's safer. Seraphina smiled, small and knowing. Safety's important, so is letting someone sit on the bench next to you once in a while. He almost smiled, almost. The corner of his mouth lifted the tiniest fraction, but it was enough. For the first time that evening, Harlan Whitaker didn't feel the need to check his watch or scan for the next conversation. They talked until the program began, about favorite trails, worst city traffic stories, the way autumn leaves crunched underfoot. Each exchange peeled back another layer, small, but real. Seraphina felt warmth spread through her chest. This wasn't forced or calculated. It was easy, natural, dangerous, in the best way. As the lights dimmed for speeches, Harlan glanced at her. I didn't catch your name. Seraphina Langford. Harlan Whitaker. He extended his hand. When she took it, his grip was firm but careful, like he wasn't used to holding on for long. The spark was there, quiet, undeniable. Two people from different worlds brushing against each other, both carrying unseen weight, both surprised by how light the moment felt. Mid-chapter CTA, viewer engagement break. If you're feeling that little flutter right now, the one that happens when two guarded hearts accidentally meet, hit the like button to let me know this story is hitting home. Drop a comment. Have you ever had an unexpected conversation that changed your entire night? Share it below. I read every one and love when you join the conversation. And if you want more stories about real connection, real growth, and second chances, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Your support keeps Lord of Hearts growing. Thank you. Now, let's see where this chance encounter leads. The speeches wrapped quickly. Harlan excused himself for a call, but not before asking if she would be around afterward. Seraphina nodded, heart beating a little faster than it should. She stepped outside onto the terrace for air, the cool night wrapping around her. Below, the city glittered, endless possibility, endless risk. She thought about Harlan's guarded eyes, the tree he once climbed, the way he spoke about certainty like it was armor, and she wondered, just for a moment, what it would feel like if someone like him ever let that armor drop. A few days after the gala, Harlan sent a short message. There's a quiet cafe near the Riverwalk. Saturday at 10? No networking, just coffee. Seraphina read it twice, smiled at the directness and typed back, I'll be there. The cafe sat tucked between older brick buildings with large windows facing the Chicago River and small iron tables outside. She arrived first, choosing a corner table inside where morning light spilled across the wooden floor. She wore a cream sweater and dark jeans, hair loose, carrying only her sketchbook and a light jacket. When Harlan walked in, he looked slightly less formal, navy sweater over a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms. He spotted her immediately and crossed the room with that same purposeful stride. You beat me here, he said, pulling out the chair opposite her. Habit, she replied. I like watching the river before it gets crowded. They ordered, black coffee for him, latte for her, and the conversation picked up where the gala left off, effortless and unhurried. At first they stayed on safe ground, favorite spots along the lakefront, the best time of year for the city's architecture tours, how the wind off the water could cut through any coat. Then Harlan leaned back, fingers tracing the rim of his cup. You asked at the gala if certainty feels lonely. I've been thinking about that. Seraphina waited, giving him space. I wasn't exaggerating about growing up with nothing green, he continued. My parents left when I was 16. One morning they were there arguing about bills. The next, the apartment, was empty except for a note saying they couldn't do it anymore. No forwarding address, just gone. His voice stayed level, but the words carried weight. Seraphina felt the ache behind them. I couch-surfed with friends for a while, then got a job stocking shelves at a hardware store. Saved every cent until I could afford night classes. Real estate. Started as side work, flipping small units. Every dollar I made went back into the next deal. Control became everything because chaos had already taken too much. He looked out the window at the slow-moving water. I told myself, if I built high enough walls, nothing could touch me again. Turns out, walls keep people out, but they also keep you in. Seraphina reached across the table and rested her fingers lightly on the back of his hand. Just a brief touch, warm and steady. That kind of start would make anyone build walls. The fact that you climbed out of it at all shows strength most people never have to find. Harlan turned his hand over, so their palms met for a moment. The contact sent a quiet current through both of them. He didn't pull away immediately. "You don't judge," he said quietly. "Most people hear that story and either pity me or try to fix it. You just listen." "Listening is free," she answered with a small smile. "And sometimes it's the only thing that helps." They sat in comfortable silence for a minute, hands still touching, coffee cooling between them. Then Harlan gave a soft laugh, rare, almost surprised at himself. "What?" she asked. "I haven't talked about any of this in years, not even to my assistant, who knows every meeting I've ever had. Maybe you needed a stranger who cares about parks more than portfolios," she teased gently. "Maybe I needed someone who doesn't flinch at the truth." The laughter faded into something softer. Seraphina traced a small circle on the back of his hand with her thumb before letting go. The gesture felt natural, intimate, without pushing. They moved outside to a table by the railing when the sun warmed the air. Harlan pointed out a building across the river he had redeveloped years ago. Seraphina shared how she once spent an entire afternoon sketching the same view from a different angle. They laughed over terrible first job stories, his involving a flooded basement and ruined drywall, hers a client who wanted a logo exactly like Google but different. Each shared laugh loosened something in Harlan's posture. His shoulders dropped a fraction. His gaze lingered on her face longer. Seraphina felt the pull too, the way his rare smiles transformed his features, the careful way he chose words when he spoke about hard things. Romantic tension built in the small spaces, the brush of knees under the table, the way he leaned in when she spoke, how her voice softened when she answered him. As noon approached, Harlan glanced at his watch, but made no move to leave. "I have a meeting in an hour," he said, "but I'd rather stay here." "Then stay a little longer," she replied. "Meetings can wait 5 minutes." He stayed 20. Before they parted, he walked her to the corner where her car was parked. At the crosswalk, he stopped, turned to face her fully. "Thank you," he said, "for listening, for not making me feel like a project." Seraphina met his eyes. "You're not a project. You're a person who's been through more than most, and you still show up to galas for trees. That counts." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, gentle, deliberate. The touch lingered at her cheek for a heartbeat. "Can we do this again? Soon?" "I'd like that," she said, voice barely above a whisper. They parted with a promise of next time, both carrying the warmth of the morning long after they walked away. CTA placement, natural mid to late chapter break. If this moment between them is tugging at your heart, if you believe resilience and really hearing someone can start to heal old wounds, drop a like right now to show your support. Comment below. Who in your life has truly listened when you needed it most? Share their name or what they did. Your stories remind all of us how powerful listening can be. And if you're loving these journeys of guarded hearts opening up, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Lord of Hearts is here to bring more hope, more connection, more second chances. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their story matters too. Thank you for being part of this community. Now, let's keep going. The rest of the day passed in a gentle glow for Seraphina. She sketched by the window that afternoon, lines softer than usual, her mind replaying the feel of his hand, the quiet way he had trusted her with pieces of his past. Harlan, back in his office, found himself staring at a contract without reading it. The echo of her voice, "Listening is free," looping in his head. For the first time in years, certainty didn't feel quite so necessary. One conversation had shifted something small but permanent. Walls didn't crumble in a single morning, but they could develop hairline cracks, enough for light to slip through, enough for two people to start seeing each other clearly. Their second meeting happened 3 days later on a crisp Saturday afternoon. Harlan suggested a walk along the 606 trail, an elevated path lined with murals, wildflowers, and views of rooftops stretching toward the horizon. Seraphina arrived wearing a light jacket over a soft blue top, scarf loose around her neck. Harlan waited at the entrance in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater, hands in pockets, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. They started walking side by side, pace slow and unhurried. The trail curved gently, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant coffee from food trucks below. Conversation drifted from light topics, favorite murals, the best street food spots, to quieter admissions. "I used to come here alone when deals got heavy," Harlan said, nodding toward a bench overlooking the skyline. "Cleared my head. Never brought anyone else." Seraphina glanced at him. "Then I'm honored." He gave a half smile. "You should be." As they walked, their hands brushed once, twice. On the third time, Harlan caught her fingers in his, casual at first, then intentional. His palm felt warm, steady. Seraphina's pulse quickened, but she didn't pull away. They continued like that, hand in hand, the simple contact speaking louder than words. That evening, he invited her to dinner at a small Italian place in River North. Dim lighting, candle flames flickering on white tablecloths, no dress code, just good food. They shared plates of pasta carbonara and tiramisu, laughing when sauce ended up on her chin and he wiped it away with his thumb, the gesture lingering a second too long. Under the table their knees touched, and stayed touching. When the waiter cleared plates, Harlan reached across and traced slow circles on the back of her hand with his fingertip. "You make ordinary evenings feel different," he said quietly. "You make me feel seen," she answered, voice soft. They left the restaurant and walked to her car parked a block away. A light drizzle began, cold drops pattering on shoulders and hair. Neither hurried. At her car door, Harlan turned her gently to face him. Rain slid down his temple. She reached up to brush it away. Time slowed. He leaned in first, slow enough for her to meet him halfway. Their lips met in a kiss that started tender, exploratory, then deepened with quiet certainty. Rain fell around them, soaking clothes, but neither noticed. His hands framed her face, hers rested on his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath wet fabric. When they parted, foreheads touching, breaths mingling, Harlan whispered. Against her mouth, "I've wanted to do that since the gala." Seraphina smiled through damp lashes. "Took you long enough." The next weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen moments. Weeknight dinners at his penthouse overlooking the lake. Takeouts spread on the coffee table because neither wanted formality. They sat close on the sectional, her legs draped over his lap while they talked about everything and nothing. One evening he pulled her against his side, arm around her shoulders. She nestled in, head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. His fingers played absently with strands of her hair. Another night, after a long day, they ended up on his balcony despite the chill. Harlan wrapped a blanket around both of them, pulling her back to his front. She leaned into him, arms covering his where they crossed her waist. They stood like that for a long time, city lights reflecting on the water below, his chin resting on her shoulder. "You feel safe here," he murmured into her ear. "I do," she whispered back. The physical closeness grew naturally, respectful, never rushed. Cuddles on the couch lasted longer each time. Hand-holding became constant. Whispers in the dark when one of them couldn't sleep. "You still awake?" "Yeah, good. Just checking." Soft kisses on foreheads, temples, the corner of the mouth. Each touch carried trust. Each moment built another layer of intimacy. Harlan changed in small, visible ways. He cancelled a late meeting to meet her for sunset at the lake. He laughed more freely, full, unguarded laughs that surprised even him. He started sharing worries about upcoming deals, asking her opinion, actually listening to her answers. Walls that had stood for decades developed visible cracks. Seraphina felt the joy of it all, and the growing guilt beneath. Every time he opened up, every time he looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered, the secret pressed harder against her ribs. She wanted to tell him. The words formed on her tongue a dozen times, during quiet drives, while curled together on his couch in the middle of a kiss. But fear stopped her every time. What if the truth turned his warmth to distance? What if he saw deception instead of protection? The love grew anyway, deep, undeniable, terrifying in its strength. Stakes rose with every shared breath. She caught herself imagining futures, mornings waking beside him, holidays together, building something lasting. He spoke of we without hesitation. We should try that new trail next weekend. We'll figure it out. Each we tightened the knot in her stomach. One rainy Sunday, they stayed in his place all day. Movies played low in the background while they lay tangled on the couch, her back to his chest, his arm draped over her waist, fingers laced with hers. He pressed a slow kiss to the side of her neck. "I'm falling for you," he said against her skin, voice rough with honesty. Hard. Seraphina closed her eyes, heart pounding. "I'm already there," she whispered. The confession hung between them, sweet, heavy, real. If you're feeling every heartbeat of this slow, beautiful fall, if the idea of two guarded people finally letting love in is hitting deep, smash that like button right now to help this story reach more hearts. Drop a comment. What's the most vulnerable thing someone has ever said to you in a relationship? Or what moment made you realize you were truly falling? Your answers build this community and remind us all that love starts with honesty and courage. Share this video with one person who needs to believe in second chances and real connection. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hit the bell. Lord of Hearts is bringing more stories like this every week. Thank you for being here, for feeling with us, for helping these tales spread. Now let's see how deep this love can go before the truth steps in. They spent the rest of the afternoon wrapped in each other, rain tapping the windows like gentle applause. Harlan's walls continued to lower, Seraphina's secret continued to rise. Love bloomed bright and strong, and fragile in its perfection. Neither knew how close the breaking point had come. The easy rhythm they had settled into began to show faint strain in the weeks that followed. Harlan noticed small things first. How Seraphina always changed the subject when family came up, how she never mentioned parents or siblings by name, how holiday plans stayed vague on her side, even as he casually invited her to join him for Thanksgiving at a quiet cabin up north. One Thursday evening they met at his penthouse after work. Seraphina arrived with takeout from their favorite Thai place, pad see ew for her, green curry for him. They ate cross-legged on the living room rug, plates balanced on laps, soft jazz playing low. Conversation flowed until Harlan set his fork down and looked at her directly. "You've never told me about your parents," he said. Not accusatory, just curious. "Not really. I know you're close to your friends here, but family? Nothing." Seraphina kept her eyes on her plate, twirling noodles slowly. "They're private people. We talk, but it's not the kind of thing I bring up a lot." Harlan nodded once, but the answer didn't satisfy. "You know almost everything about mine. My parents leaving, the years scraping by, even the tree I lost. I've told you things I don't tell anyone. But when I ask about you, it's like hitting a closed door." She set her plate aside and met his gaze. "It's not about hiding from you. It's just complicated." Complicated how? His tone stayed calm, but a thread of frustration wove through it. "We've been doing this for months. I'm not asking for bank statements or childhood photos. Just basic pieces. Where did you grow up? What do your parents do? Simple stuff." Seraphina felt the familiar knot tighten in her chest. She could tell him the truth right then. Langford family, tech empire, billions in assets. The decision to step away from it all. But the words stuck. Every scenario she imagined ended with his face changing, surprise turning to calculation, warmth cooling to distance, the same shift she had seen in Ethan years ago. "I grew up here in the city," she said carefully. "My parents worked in business. They're retired now. We're not as close as we used to be." Harlan studied her for a long moment. "That's the same answer you gave last month." Word for word, she exhaled. "Harlan, I'm not trying to shut you out. I just need time." "Time for what?" He leaned forward slightly. We talk about everything else, future trips, what kind of house we'd want someday, how we'd raise kids if it ever came to that. But this one part stays locked away. It makes me wonder what else is behind the door. The room felt smaller. Seraphina pulled her knees to her chest. You're asking me to open something I've kept closed for good reason. Can't that be enough for now? He rubbed a hand over his jaw. I want it to be. But trust goes both ways. I've given you mine. I'm asking for the same. Silence stretched between them, thicker than before. Seraphina's throat tightened. She wanted to reach for him, to close the gap, but the weight of her secret held her still. I'm sorry, she said finally. I don't know how to do this without risking everything we've built. Harlan's expression softened, but the hurt lingered. I'm not asking you to risk us. I'm asking you to let me in. If there's something hard, we face it together. That's what this is supposed to be. She nodded, eyes stinging. I know. I just need a little more time. He stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the dark lake. After a minute, he turned back. Okay, time. But not forever, Seraphina. I can't keep wondering if I'm only seeing half of you. They didn't argue further that night. They cleaned up in quiet tandem, then sat on the couch, close, but not touching the way they usually did. When she left, he walked her to the elevator, kissed her forehead instead of her lips, and watched the doors close without another word. The next morning, Seraphina's phone buzzed with a message from her mother. The foundation reveal is scheduled for next month. We need you there, Sarah. It's time to step forward publicly. The family expects it. She stared at the screen, stomach dropping. Her parents had been patient for years, respecting her choice to live quietly. But the new philanthropic arm, focused on urban education and green spaces, was her brainchild. She had quietly shaped its direction, funded initial programs through anonymous channels. Now the board wanted her name attached, publicly. Another message followed from her older brother, Sis. You can't keep pretending the empire doesn't exist. People are starting to ask questions. Mom's worried you'll regret staying in the shadows forever. Seraphina set the phone face down and pressed her palms to her eyes. The parallel pressure closed in from both sides, Harlan wanting more openness, her family demanding full visibility. She felt caught between two truths, the life she had carefully constructed and the one she had been born into. That evening, Harlan called. His voice sounded tired. I didn't mean to push so hard last night. I care about you. More than I've let myself care about anyone in a long time. I know, she answered softly. I care too. That's why it's hard. They talked for an hour, gentler this time. No demands, just honest admissions. Harlan shared how abandonment had left him allergic to half-truths. Seraphina admitted she was scared of losing what they had if the full picture changed his view of her. They ended the call with quiet promises to keep trying, but the first real crack had formed. The small argument lingered, like smoke. Neither raised voices, neither stormed out, but the air between them felt different, thinner, more fragile. Seraphina replayed the conversation while lying awake that night. Harlan's words echoed. I can't keep wondering if I'm only seeing half of you. She understood the cost of protection. Keeping her secret had once felt like safety. Now it felt like a wall she had built between them. Honesty carried risk, exposure, judgment, potential loss, but so did continued silence. Protection preserved the present moment. Honesty offered a chance at something deeper and more durable. The moral settled over her slowly. Love built on partial truth might feel safe, but it can never feel complete. True protection isn't hiding the hard parts, it's trusting someone enough to share them, even when the outcome scares you. Seraphina stared at the ceiling, heart heavy with the choice ahead. The fortune reveal loomed closer. Harlan's patience had limits. The facade she had maintained so carefully was cracking, and once it broke, there would be no putting it back together the same way. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm, approximately 1,800 words total. The invitation arrived via a formal card delivered to Harlan's office, a family gathering at the Whitaker estate in the western suburbs. Harlan rarely attended these events. Distant relatives, surface-level small talk, discussions about old properties and inheritance details that felt more like business than blood. But this time the card included a handwritten note from his Aunt Evelyn. "It's been too long. Bring your guest if you'd like. We'd love to meet her." He showed the card to Seraphina over dinner that evening. "It's this Saturday, nothing major, just family catching up. You don't have to come, but I'd like you there." Seraphina hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I'd like to meet them too." Saturday arrived clear and cool. They drove out together, Harlan at the wheel, Seraphina in the passenger seat wearing a simple navy dress and low heels. The estate sat on several acres, brick colonial house, manicured lawns, a long driveway lined with mature oaks. Cars already lined the circular front court when they pulled up. Inside, the atmosphere felt formal but not cold. Relatives milled through the living room and dining areas, cousins Harlan barely knew, an uncle nursing a scotch, Aunt Evelyn directing staff with quiet authority. She greeted Harlan with a brief hug, then turned to Seraphina. "You must be the one we've heard so little about," Evelyn said, smiling warmly. "Harlan keeps you quite private." Seraphina returned the smile. "I'm Seraphina Langford. It's nice to meet you." Evelyn's expression shifted, subtle at first, then unmistakable recognition. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Langford, as in the Langford Group, the tech and investment firm." The room quieted by degrees. A few heads turned. Harlan glanced between them, brow furrowing. "Aunt Evelyn?" Evelyn continued, voice carrying just enough to draw more attention. "I followed the markets for years. Your father's company was legendary. Software patents, strategic acquisitions. The family fortune must be substantial." Seraphina felt the floor tilt beneath her. She opened her mouth, closed it, searched for words that wouldn't shatter everything. Harlan's hand, which had rested lightly on her lower back, fell away. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn looked at him, surprised he didn't know. "Your girlfriend is Seraphina Langford, as in heiress to one of the largest private fortunes in the Midwest. I assumed you were aware." The silence that followed felt deafening. Harlan turned slowly to Seraphina. His face held no anger yet, just stunned confusion, the kind that precedes deeper hurt. "Is that true?" he asked, voice low. Seraphina swallowed hard. "Yes." The word landed like a stone in still water. Ripples spread instantly. A cousin whispered something to another. Evelyn's hand went to her mouth in belated realization of the bomb she had dropped. Harlan stepped back half a pace. "All this time, you're a billionaire?" "I never used the money," Seraphina said quickly. "I live like anyone else. I work, I pay my own rent." "But you are," he cut in. "You've been one the whole time we've known each other." She reached for his arm. He didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. "Harlan, I didn't tell you because I wanted you to see me, really see me, without the label changing things." His eyes searched hers, looking for something he suddenly couldn't find. "You let me pour out every piece of my past, abandonment scraping by, building from nothing. You listened, you comforted me, and you never once said, 'I understand wealth because I was born into it.'" "I was afraid," she whispered. "I've seen what happens when people learn the truth. They change, they want things, or they resent. I didn't want that with you." Harlan's jaw tightened. "So instead, you chose to let me fall in love with a version of you that isn't complete. You chose silence over trust." Tears welled in Seraphina's eyes. "I chose to protect what we had. I thought if you loved me first as Seraphina, the woman who sketches, in parks, who listens, who cares, then the rest wouldn't matter. But it does matter," he said, voice cracking for the first time. "Because now I don't know what was real. Every time you deflected a question, every vague answer about family, every time you let me open up while you held back, it was all calculated." "No," she said fiercely. "None of it was calculated. Every moment with you was honest. The only thing I hid was money, not my feelings, not my heart." Harlan looked around the room, at the relatives watching in awkward fascination, then back at her. "And yet here we are, in front of my entire family, finding out from someone else. That's not protection, Seraphina. That's betrayal." The word struck like a slap. Seraphina flinched. Tears spilled over now, tracking down her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. I love you. That part has never been a lie. Harlan's shoulders rose and fell with a heavy breath. Love built on secrets isn't love. It's something else. He turned away, walking toward the French doors that led to the garden. Seraphina followed a few steps, then stopped when he paused at the threshold without looking back. I need space, he said quietly. I can't do this right now. She stood frozen in the middle of the room, surrounded by strangers who now knew more about her than the man she loved. Her chest ached with a pain so sharp it stole her breath. I'm sorry, she managed, voice breaking. I'm so sorry. No one spoke as she gathered her purse and walked out the front door. The driveway felt endless. She made it to the end of the path before the sobs came. Deep, wrenching, uncontrollable. She leaned against a tree, arms wrapped around herself, tears soaking the sleeves of her dress. Inside, Harlan remained by the doors, staring at the darkening lawn. His aunt approached cautiously. I didn't know, Evelyn said softly. I thought, I know, he replied. It's not your fault. But the damage was done. The heart he had finally begun to thaw now felt refrozen, sharper, colder, wounded in a place he hadn't guarded because he thought it was safe. Seraphina drove home alone, vision blurred by tears, replaying every moment they had shared, the first kiss in the rain, nights curled on his couch, stars above the cabin, his confession that walls felt unnecessary with her. All of it real, all of it now tainted by one withheld truth. Heartbreak peaked in the quiet of her apartment that night. She sat on the floor with her back against the couch, knees drawn up, phone dark beside her. No message from Harlan, no call, just silence. The storm had gathered and broken. What remained was wreckage. Two people who had come so close to something lasting, now separated by the very thing she had feared most, the truth. The lakeside mansion glowed under strings of soft white lights strung between ancient oaks. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms directed arriving cars along the circular drive. Guests in elegant attire stepped out onto flagstone paths leading to the main entrance. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. Floral arrangements towered on. Pedestals and a string quartet played gentle melodies in the background. The event had been planned for months, the official launch of the Langford Family Foundation, a new philanthropic entity focused on urban education, community green spaces, and youth innovation programs. Tonight, the family would publicly commit substantial resources and name the key figures behind it. Seraphina arrived early with her parents and brother. She wore a midnight blue gown with clean lines and subtle beading. Beautiful, but understated compared to the sparkling dresses around her. Her mother squeezed her hand as they entered the grand ballroom. We're proud of you, Sarah. This is your vision coming to life. Seraphina managed a small smile. I know. It just feels exposed. Her father, tall and silver-haired, placed a reassuring arm around her shoulders. You've earned this moment. The world should know the heart behind the work. The program began after cocktails. Guests filled rows of cushioned chairs, facing a low stage flanked by large screens displaying images of city parks, school libraries, and smiling children. Seraphina sat in the front row beside her family, hands folded tightly in her lap. The MC, a longtime family advisor, stepped to the podium. Tonight, we celebrate not just generosity, but vision. The Langford Family Foundation exists because one person saw the gaps in our communities and refused to look away. He gestured toward the stage. Please welcome the driving force behind this initiative, Seraphina Langford. Applause rose as Seraphina stood and walked up the short steps. Spotlights followed her, cameras flashed from the media section at the back. She took the microphone, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Thank you, she began. This foundation isn't about one person. It's about what happens when we choose to invest in each other, in safe places for kids to play, in classrooms that inspire, in futures that don't depend on where someone started. I've seen how small changes create lasting impact. That's why we're here tonight. She spoke for 10 minutes, clear, passionate, grounded in stories from her volunteer work and quiet observations of the city. When she finished, the room erupted in genuine applause. Her father joined her on stage, placing a symbolic check representing the initial endowment into her hands. Photographers captured the moment. Headlines were already forming in the minds of attending journalists. Heiress steps forward, hidden Langford talent revealed. Seraphina stepped off the stage to hugs from family and congratulations from guests. She smiled, thanked people, posed for photos, every motion practiced and polite. But inside, the weight pressed heavier. This was the life she had stepped away from years ago. Now it pulled her back into the light, and Harlan wasn't here to see it with her. Across the city, in his penthouse, Harlan sat alone on the sectional where they had once spent lazy Sundays. The television was on mute. He had opened a news app earlier out of idle curiosity after seeing a mention of the Langford event in his feed. He hadn't planned to watch. But when the live stream appeared in the trending section, he clicked before he could stop himself. The screen showed Seraphina on stage, poised, articulate, radiant in a way that made his chest ache. He turned up the volume just as she spoke about green spaces giving people room to breathe. Her words echoed conversations they had shared on trails, at cafes, under stars. The same quiet conviction, the same care for ordinary lives. Harlan watched her hand the oversized check to the foundation director, saw the pride in her parents' faces, heard the MC describe her as the visionary behind the vision. Every detail confirmed what Aunt Evelyn had said, and more. This wasn't a distant inheritance she had stumbled into. This was her world, her ideas, her commitment, her quiet influence, now laid bare for everyone to see. The realization struck slowly, then all at once. She hadn't hidden the money to deceive him. She had hidden it to protect herself from exactly what he had done the moment he learned the truth, pulled back, questioned every moment, labeled her silence as betrayal. She had lived modestly, worked hard, chosen kindness over flash, not because she was pretending, but because she believed those things mattered more than any balance sheet. Harlan leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the screen as Seraphina answered questions from reporters off stage. Her answers stayed humble, redirecting praise to the teams and communities involved. No boasting, no entitlement. Just the same woman who had listened to his childhood stories without judgment, who had kissed him in the rain, who had made him laugh until his sides hurt. Regret flooded him in waves, sharp, suffocating. He replayed their last conversation at the estate, his cold words, the way he had turned away, the silence he had left her in. He had accused her of building love on secrets when he himself had let fear rebuild his walls in an instant. He had judged her through the lens of his own scars, abandonment, opportunists, people who took without giving back. And in doing so, he had become the very thing she feared most, someone who changed the moment the truth appeared. He muted the television again and sat in the dark, head in his hands. The penthouse felt cavernous, too quiet, too empty. Every corner held memories of her, the blanket they had shared on the couch, the spot on the balcony where he had held her under the stars, the kitchen counter where she had once teased him about his terrible coffee-making skills. The moral crystallized in the silence, heavy and undeniable. Judgments born of fear destroy what love tries to build. He had let old wounds dictate his reaction instead of trusting the woman who had already proven her heart. Fear had made him see deception where there was only caution. It had turned vulnerability into accusation. Protection wasn't always hiding. It was sometimes the brave choice to wait until trust felt safe. He had punished her for choosing safety the same way he had chosen it for years. Harlan stood and walked to the window. The city lights glittered below, indifferent to the ache in his chest. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over her name. No message sent since the estate, no call. Just days of silence he had enforced himself. He typed, deleted, typed again. I watched the event. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. He stared at the words, heart pounding. Then he deleted them too. Words on a screen felt too small for the regret swallowing him whole. Instead, he grabbed his keys. The event would still be ongoing. If he left now, he might make it before the night ended. before she slipped away into the life she had never wanted to reclaim alone. He moved quickly, coat half on, mind racing with everything he needed to say. Regret had become clarity. Love deserved the chance to heal what fear had broken. And if she would still listen, he would spend every day proving he could be the man who stayed, no matter what the truth revealed. Harlan's car cut through the night streets of Chicago, headlights slicing across wet pavement as rain began to fall again. The lakeside mansion was 40 minutes away in good traffic. Tonight the roads felt endless. He gripped the wheel tighter, mind racing faster than the engine. The live stream had ended minutes ago, but the image of Seraphina on stage, poised, honest, everything he had fallen for, burned behind his eyes. He had been wrong. Completely, unforgivably wrong. He didn't call ahead. Words over the phone would fail him now. He needed to see her face, needed her to see his. No walls, no defenses, just the truth he should have given her from the beginning. The estate came into view, lights still blazing, cars still lining the drive, the event clearly ongoing with after-party mingling. Harlan pulled up to the valet stand, handed off the keys without waiting for a ticket, and strode toward the entrance. Security at the door glanced at his damp coat and determined expression. "Invitation?" one asked. "I'm here for Seraphina Langford," Harlan said, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "Please tell her Harlan Whitaker needs to speak with her. It's urgent." The guard hesitated, then spoke into a radio. Moments later, a young woman in a black dress, likely event staff, appeared and led him inside. The ballroom still hummed with conversation, guests clustered in small groups, champagne flutes catching the light. Seraphina stood near the far wall beside her mother and a cluster of donors, smiling politely as someone congratulated her. She looked composed on the surface, but Harlan knew her well enough to see the faint strain around her eyes, the way her fingers twisted the stem of an untouched glass. He crossed the room without slowing. Heads turned, whispers followed. Seraphina noticed the shift in attention first. Her gaze lifted, found him, and froze. Harlan stopped a few feet away. The room seemed to narrow to just the two of them. "Seraphina," he said, voice carrying enough to quiet nearby chatter. She handed her glass to her mother without looking away from him. "Harlan." He took one more step, then dropped to one knee, right there on the polished marble floor, in front of family, donors, photographers, everyone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few phones lifted. "I was wrong," he began, looking up at her with raw, unguarded eyes. "I watched you tonight. I saw the woman who built something meaningful with her own hands, who chose kindness over spotlight, who protected her heart the same way I protected mine for years, and I punished you for it." Seraphina's breath caught. She took a half step forward, then stopped. "I let fear decide for me," Harlan continued, voice thickening. "Fear of being used again, fear of losing control, fear that you were too good to be true. So when the truth came out, I didn't listen. I accused. I walked away. I left you standing alone in a room full of strangers who now knew more about you than I did." Tears shimmered in her eyes. She pressed her lips together, fighting to hold them back. "I'm not asking for forgiveness because I deserve it," he said. "I'm asking because I love you, completely, stupidly, irrevocably, and if there's even a chance you still feel the same, I will spend every day proving I can be the man who stays, who listens, who chooses trust over old scars." The room had gone nearly silent. Harlan's knees pressed into the cold floor, but he didn't move. Vulnerability poured from him, shoulders slightly hunched, hands open at his sides, no attempt to hide the tremor in his voice. Seraphina stared down at him. Seconds stretched. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She glanced at her mother, whose expression had softened from surprise to quiet understanding, then back to Harlan. "I was scared too," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper but clear enough to carry. "Scared that if you knew everything, you'd see dollar signs instead of me. Scared I'd lose the only person who ever made me feel truly seen." She took another step closer. "But I never stopped loving you, not for a second." Harlan exhaled shakily. "Then let me make this right, please." Seraphina reached down. Her fingers brushed his cheek, then slid to his jaw. She tugged gently. He rose to his feet, eyes never leaving hers. The moment he stood, she closed the distance and wrapped her arms around his neck. Harlan pulled her in tight, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other around her waist. She buried her face in his shoulder. He pressed his lips to her hair. They held each other as if the world might disappear if they let go. Soft applause started somewhere in the room, tentative at first, then warmer. A few whistles followed. Seraphina laughed through tears against his coat. Harlan smiled into her hair, the sound rough with relief. When they finally parted just enough to look at each other, foreheads resting together, Harlan whispered, "I'm sorry I made you wait. I'm sorry I made you doubt." She whispered back. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "No more secrets? No more secrets," she agreed. "No more running." She nodded. "We face it together." He kissed her then. Slow, deep, unhurried, right there in the middle of the ballroom. Not for show, but because he couldn't wait another second to feel her close again. She kissed him back with the same quiet certainty, hands framing his face. When they broke apart, breathless, Harlan glanced around at the smiling, teary-eyed faces. Seraphina's mother approached first, touching Harlan's arm gently. "Welcome to the family," she said simply. Harlan swallowed hard. "Thank you." The stakes that had felt so impossibly high moments ago began to resolve into something hopeful. The fortune, the secrets, the fears, they no longer stood between them. Instead, they became part of the story they would tell together. How two guarded hearts learned to choose love over protection, trust over control, forgiveness over pride. Guests drifted back into conversation, giving them space. Harlan kept Seraphina's hand in his as they moved toward the terrace doors for air. Outside, rain had softened to a fine mist. City lights reflected on the lake like scattered stars. "We have time now," he said quietly. "All the time we need." Seraphina leaned into his side. "We do." They stood together, watching the water, breathing in sync. The storm had passed. What remained was clear sky, and the promise of a future built on truth, second chances, and the kind of love that survives revelation. Chapter 10. Hearts United and Lessons Eternal. Approximately 1,800 words total. Months after the night at the lakeside mansion, Chicago looked different to both of them. The city's rhythm, the honking taxis, the lake wind, the glow of skyscrapers at dusk, felt warmer, more welcoming. Harlan and Seraphina had moved into a quieter apartment together on the near north side, high ceilings, big windows facing the water, a small study where her sketches covered one wall and his deal files occupied neat shelves on the opposite side. No penthouse isolation, no hidden estates, just a shared space built on equal ground. They kept routines simple. Mornings started with coffee on the balcony. Harlan learned to make it exactly the way she liked. Strong, no sugar, a dash of cinnamon. Seraphina taught him to slow down enough to notice the sunrise shifting colors across the lake. Evenings often ended curled on the couch, her legs across his lap, while they read or talked about the day. Small habits became anchors, his hand finding hers automatically when they walked, her head resting on his shoulder during quiet movies, shared glances across a room that said everything without words. The fortune reveal had changed public perception, but they chose how it changed their private world. Seraphina stepped fully into her role with the Langford Family Foundation, no longer from the shadows. She led initiatives with the same passion she always had, opening new community centers, funding after-school art programs, expanding urban parks. Harlan joined her whenever his schedule allowed. He brought his expertise in real estate development to help secure properties for green spaces and affordable housing projects. Together they turned ideas into concrete results. A playground rising where an abandoned lot once stood. A library renovated in a neighborhood that had gone without one for years. Philanthropy became their shared language. They attended board meetings side by side, debated funding priorities over late-night dinners, celebrated small wins with quiet toasts at home. Harlan discovered satisfaction in work that wasn't measured by profit margins alone. Seraphina found freedom in no longer carrying the weight of her background alone. Their partnership balanced ambition with humility, his drive tempered by her empathy, her vision sharpened by his practicality. Growth came steadily, sometimes painfully. Harlan worked through old habits of control. Therapy sessions helped him name fears before they could dictate reactions. Seraphina practiced openness daily, sharing thoughts she once would have held back, trusting that honesty wouldn't break what they had built. They argued occasionally, about schedules, about priorities, about how much to share publicly. But the arguments ended in apologies and renewed promises. Each disagreement taught them something new: how to listen without defending, how to forgive without scorekeeping, how to choose we over me. One crisp autumn afternoon, they returned to the countryside cabin where they had once stargazed. The leaves had turned brilliant again. The lake reflected the same fiery colors. They hiked the familiar trails, hand in hand, pausing at the same lookout. Harlan stopped and turned to her. "I used to think certainty was the goal," he said. "Control everything, risk nothing. Then I met you, and I realized certainty without connection is just loneliness dressed up as safety." Seraphina smiled, squeezing his hand. "And I used to think protection meant hiding. Turns out real protection is letting someone see all of you, and trusting they'll stay." He pulled her close, foreheads touching. "I'm staying, always." They renewed their promises that day, not with grand gestures, but with quiet certainty. No rings yet, they weren't rushing. But the future they spoke of felt solid, more projects together. Perhaps a house with a yard someday. Children who would grow up knowing love wasn't measured by wealth, but by presence. Back in the city, their life settled into a rhythm of purpose and joy. Friends noticed the change: how Harlan laughed more easily, how Seraphina carried herself with lighter shoulders. Family gatherings blended both sides, her parents hosting dinners where Harlan's distant relatives slowly warmed, his Aunt Evelyn becoming an unexpected ally in foundation work. The strongest lessons emerged naturally from their story. Trust is the foundation love stands on. Without it, even the deepest feelings wobble. When Harlan chose to believe Seraphina's heart over his old fears, and when she chose to forgive his initial reaction, they proved that trust can be rebuilt stronger than before. Forgiveness heals what judgment breaks. Harlan's public plea and Seraphina's willingness to meet him halfway showed that grace isn't weakness, it's courage. Holding grudges keeps wounds open, offering forgiveness closes them and makes room for something better. True wealth lives in character and love, not accounts or status. Seraphina had known this instinctively when she chose a modest life. Harlan learned it when he saw her shine brightest doing work that mattered, not when headlines praised her fortune. Money can open doors, but only kindness, integrity, and connection keep them open. These truths weren't preached, they were lived. Every shared sunrise, every joint project, every quiet "I love you" whispered in the dark reinforced them. If this journey, from hidden hearts to open ones, from fear to forgiveness, from secrets to shared truth, has touched you, moved you, reminded you what real love looks like, hit that like button right now to send this story further. Drop a comment below. What's one lesson about trust, forgiveness, or true wealth that this tale left with you? Or share a moment in your own life when choosing love over fear changed everything. Your words inspire thousands who watch these videos. Don't hold back. If Lord of Hearts has become a place where you find hope, healing, and heart every week, subscribe if you haven't already and turn on notifications so you never miss the next uplifting story. Share this final chapter with someone who needs to believe that second chances are real, that love can survive the truth, that hearts really can unite after the storm. Thank you for every like, every comment, every share, every moment you've spent here feeling with us. You make these stories matter. You make this community real. Until the next tale of hearts finding their way home, keep choosing love. It's always worth it.